The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, Pfizer, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Renature from Capstone Games. Then they take a look back at their review of Tokyo Metro from Jordan Draper Games in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're joining us for episode 246, which we're titling Back on Track. Back on Track. That title, thanks to Andrea Merrihew. Although I don't know if it's Andrea, what's the third one? There's a third one.
Ooh, I don't know.
Andrea, or Andrea.
Yeah.
Wait, or is that the same as the first?
Let's see. Andrea.
So,
yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah, there's three options. So, A. Merrihew, thank you very much. So, we're of course, we're talking about Renature as our main review, which is a game about spreading nature, reclaiming nature, so to speak. And then also we're talking about the Tokyo Metro, a rail game in our Duke's Double Take. So combining both of those, that is an excellent job. And is that A's first name, I believe? I think that's what we think.
So this is the thing. I used to be very diligent about updating the naming leaderboard. It's gotten a little dusty. It might have been, about a year or so since I last updated that thing. But I don't recall another name from A. Merrihew, so not sure. But yeah, congrats. It's a fantastic name. And I will tell you, Sean, it works not only for the two games we're reviewing, but I expressed in the On Deck thread a sense of optimism. There's some optimism in the air beyond just the allergies and the pollen floating around. At least to me, there's a sense of hope and positivity, and we're coming out of this pandemic and all that great stuff. Partially from the fact that, Sean, you, since the time we last recorded it, got your first dose of vaccine.
Correct.
And my parents just today got their first dose of vaccine. No sense of when I'll be able to get mine or Abby will be able to get hers. Although, as we're recording this, I believe it was announced that all Americans, all U.S. adults, should be vaccine eligible by May 1st.
May 1st is what I saw.
Yeah, so it's feeling optimistic, optimism in the air. And I would say this, Sean, I would also throw out there that I'm a homeowner now. So not officially living there, still coming to you from the original. Not the original, but the most recent St. Louis address, I guess, the one with Abby. But yeah, we closed on the house, no major issues there, and so we're set to move in and set up shop here within the next few weeks. So super exciting on that front. But yeah, I'd say back on track. It's sort of everything feels like it's getting back on track in the world, Sean.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm super optimistic. As soon as I get my second shot, I'm just going to go around putting my mouth on drinking fountains left and right. It's going to be great.
Excellent.
I miss doing that.
Yeah, no, I remember all the time we would have to take long breaks from games, so you have to reinfect all of those. Yeah, no, I remember that.
Well, and before we forget, we get help naming all of our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild. That's guild number 2008. Every week or every other week before our episode, we put an on-deck topic that you can comment on, give us some title suggestions, and tell us what you think about the games that we're going to be talking about. So we've got some runners-up that we will give you at the end of the episode. Well, Alex, we kind of did anything else?
No,
anything
not
else
for me.
To talk about?
No, what about you?
All right.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, great, terrific.
Okay.
I had a full day trial on Monday. I had a half day hearing this afternoon, Thursday. It's been a busy week, but what else is new? I'm in rather good spirits though. So yeah. And here's what I'll say. We'll go into recent plays here in a second. I have two recent plays, two beefy games to talk about, which is pretty interesting. And on top of it, another interesting development. I'm gonna hold this up. Obviously, our listeners can't see this, but I'm gonna hold this up so you can react to what I am showing you. Can Can you see what I'm?
I can see it. I didn't know Raquel was pregnant again. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, no, oh god, no. I have decided to get back into Warhammer 40K.
Ooh.
So I picked up the newish 9th edition rulebook. I've picked up 3 of the army codexes or codices, if you prefer. I think I had mentioned a while back that Mariah had expressed some desire to play, and my plan was to just play old editions because I was this grumpy old man that thought the new editions were, terrible or something. But I haven't played since 6th edition, so they're on 9th edition now. I've been building some terrain. I'm going through all the rule books. It's pretty interesting because Warhammer was a big part of my life for a long time. Very rarely though did I play Warhammer and Magic at the same time. So we'll see how that goes, because those are 2 very toxic communities in a lot of ways, and 2 very expensive hobbies. So
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
In balancing your gaming priorities.
It's hard, man. It's hard. There's so many things I want to do.
And only so much time you have.
That's true.
Well, what have you been playing that's not Warhammer 40K or Magic these days? And you've actually been playing some board games, which is stunning to me.
Yeah, so I have gone out to Empire when it's been closed. I've done that a couple times in the last couple months, not a lot, but I did manage to do that twice recently. Empire is talking about doing kind of Dukes only Wednesday nights after close. I'm not fully comfortable with that because when we go when it's closed, there's only like 3 or 4 of us. We're all masked, and I'm fine with that. I'm not super crazy about there being 12 people at Empire. Like that just, I don't know. I'm not super on board with that yet. But anyway, so this was a play that I got. I think this was actually after work. Rory had played this game. It's called Beyond the Sun. And he said he thought I would absolutely love it. And he was going to get a play in with Craig. And he said, why don't I come over after work? It's about a 90-minute game. And yeah, we were done by like 6:30, 6:45. So I got home in time to make dinner and everything. So Beyond the Sun, it's designed by Dennis K. Chan, it's published by Rio Grande Games, and it has art by a magic artist who has done my favorite magic card. His name is Franz Vollwinkle, and he did a card called Time Sieve, which is it's my favorite magic card. It's an artifact that you can tap, sacrifice 5 other artifacts to take an extra turn. I've met Mr. Vollwinkle at a Magic Grand Prix, and I actually had him. Don't shake your head at me.
Okay.
This is all very interesting. There's like 3 people out there that are totally on board with this right now. I met Mr. Vollwinkle at a Magic Grand Prix when they still did Grand Prix, and I had him draw a playmat. I paid him like $50 to draw Time Sieve on a blank playmat for me, and it's my favorite playmat, and it's awesome. So, okay. Beyond the Sun, though. Not Magic. We're done with Magic? You good?
I'm very done with Magic.
Oh, Alex. Okay. So Beyond the Sun is a tech tree game. Just tech tree, right? You remember the game, was it Progress? I think it's an NSKN game. Progress, like evolution of technology.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, we reviewed it. You liked it. I liked it. It was an action selection game, and you were just trying to move up your tracks of technology that would give you like extra actions and but it was just a tech tree. There was no like underlying Civ game. It was just you're progressing up these different tech tracks. There was a lot to like about it, but it just felt like it was 3/4 of a game. Right? Didn't need to be a full 4X game with a tech tree, but still it felt like something was missing. So this is also a tech tree game. It's a space civilization game in which you're collectively deciding the technological progress of humankind at the dawn of the spacefaring era. So it's also a single worker placement game. Think of something like Le Havre, where you're moving, one worker around to any of the open spots. And at the start of the game, everyone has access to the same basic technology, which is basic spacefaring. And so you can go to a basic spacefaring spot, which will let you research a level 1 technology. So there are these level 1 technologies that are all the same every game, but they are going to branch into certain level 2s, which will branch into certain level 3s and then certain level 4s. And obviously every level of tech is going to be, a much higher level or much higher power, so to speak. And so one of the things you can do is you can research a level 1 technology in that basic spacefaring spot, and that will let you then put your marker next to one of the 4 level 1 technologies. And there's military, commerce, commercial, and science. Those are the 4 types of technology. And a lot of times there will be an immediate bonus when you research the technology. And then there may also be a new worker placement spot that becomes available only for people that have developed that technology. Once you start to develop level 2 technologies, it's going to open up, there are these covered worker placement spots, these different guilds that will let you research level 3 technologies, do all this other stuff. And also, when you start researching level 2 or higher technologies, there is an incentive to get there first because there's an event that you'll trigger. You flip over a card, then you do the event, and usually it's going to benefit just that person that has done the research. Now, so what's interesting here is what I've described is similar in certain ways to progress, right? Where I said progress felt like it was missing something else. Well, this adds in something else that I think really makes a difference. So Beyond the Sun adds in a space exploration board, but it's very abstracted. Not so abstracted that doesn't feel like what it is you're doing, but it feels like you're able to pour your technological advancements into the space board. So basically there are 4 cards, 2 A systems and 2 B systems. And then there's these systems that kind of connect them. And you start the game off with a ship, a level 1 ship, and you can add more ships through certain actions, and the ships can move along to the different planets. You can control the planet by having a higher strength there. Usually gives you some sort of bonus. Eventually, there's an action you can take once you have the right technology to colonize a planet. It's going to be worth points for you at the end of the game. It's also going to give you a colonization bonus. And as soon as you colonize, let's say I colonize an A system, we draw from the A deck to refill it. So it keeps you have new and newer systems that you can colonize. So what I think is also really interesting is this. Not dice system's the wrong word. There are these dice, but they're not really dice. They're just 6-sided cubes, but they kind of look like Race for the Galaxy dice, but you don't roll them. So they have on them a side that represents resources, a side that represents population, and then they have ship levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you start the game with a bunch of these dice in these columns on your board that represent resources. There are actions you need to take throughout the game that will turn resources into people, sometimes people back into resources, sometimes people or resources into ships. And at the end of each of your turns, after you've taken an action, you're able to produce. So you can say, I'm going to produce people, or I'm going to produce resources. And it's based on how there's a resource and a population track at the bottom. And there are certain actions that will allow you to remove tokens from those tracks that make those income actions a little bit more powerful. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. The game ends when a certain number of achievements have been done. There are these certain achievement cards. There are ones that are always in the game, and then it's random, the other achievements. So it might be, colonize 5 systems or develop a level 4 technology or whatever, a couple different things. But I liked this quite a bit. I think it was pretty solid. And I think you would like this too, because I remember you liked Progress. Did you look up Progress while I was talking?
I did. BGG did not like it as much as we apparently did it. It has a 6.5. And in looking at it, I still don't completely remember it. It looks like there's some level of familiarity, but I couldn't really tell you how it was played.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we both enjoyed what was there. It just felt like it was missing something. And I think this adds that little something that gives you an outlet for your technological advancements. but I think it really does a good job of being a tech tree focused game. So I liked it quite a bit, and I would certainly love to get more plays of it in. So that is Beyond the Sun by Rio Grande Games, and art by Franz Vollwinkle.
Well, I was just looking up Franz Vollwinkle. He's credited as an artist on Six Nimmt, so at least one of the editions of Six Nimmt he's involved in. He's actually credited on a lot of games. I don't know if he's the primary artist on all of these games, but he's done a good amount of art. Interesting. Very good. All right, I am going to talk about a game that was brought over by Joe from Stonemaier. We played several games on a nice masked game day. One of them was, at the time, we had discussed, Sean and you and I discussed possibly reviewing this game, but it's not really accessible in the U.S. After I played it, this game has since gotten better access in the U.S. or will soon. It's a game called The Loop. The Loop, Sean. This is a game that is being released in the U.S. by Pandasaurus. Let me pull up the who published this back when. But basically, you are fighting against the evil Dr. Fu. It's a cooperative game, and it's a deck-building cooperative game. How this works is there are these different eras representing different time, different times. So you have a medieval era, you have an era in the future, and everything in between. In each of those eras, there are different versions of Dr. Fu hanging around, and you are trying to defeat Dr. Fu. There are different parts of his machine that will get revealed, and those will have objectives that you need to complete. You are trying to complete those before that area is overrun with these kind of, I don't remember the term for them, but basically these chaos cubes. If too many of those cubes come out and land in that zone, that part of the machine is permanently shut off, and you can't finish that goal by the end of the game. If I recall correctly, it's, I believe, a best of 7. So you have to complete 4 obstacles before 4 of them are destroyed. There are other ways you lose the game, but it's a deck-building game. So you will draw a hand of 3 cards, and then you will use those cards to take various actions on your turn. You have basically one free move, and then you can use your cards to get whatever you can out of it. There are certain cubes you can drop on spaces that give energy that allow you to take extra actions or trigger cards, or do what's called a loop and untap cards of kind of the same type and use their abilities again within a round. It's delightfully produced. The aesthetic on this game I loved. It has a little cube sorter that spins around. Dr. Fu spins around between different eras. And so as you drop the cubes down, they kind of get sorted into different spaces. You have these versions of Dr. Fu you need to escort back to their original eras to create a paradox and therefore killing that Dr. Fu. Thematically, again, a ton of fun. The game itself, though, really decent little cooperative game. Elements of deck building. You have to work together. There's, I think for some gamers, Sean, there will be a little bit too much luck in this kind of game, but if it didn't bug you in Pandemic where the wrong card coming out at the wrong time can mess you up, this has kind of that, but in a little cube splitter type mechanic. So in any case, that's The Loop. It's designed by Maxime Rombourg and Theo Riviere. Art from Simon Caruso, and again, delightfully done. Original publisher listed as Ketchup Games, but it is coming to the U.S. Via Pandasaurus. Don't know exactly when that's happening, though. There you go.
Cool.
So that's The Loop, featuring Dr. Fu.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about a game that recently fulfilled from Kickstarter, and it is hot, Alex. And that is Dwellings of Eldervale, published by Breaking Games, designed by Luke Laurie. Oh boy, I don't know, Alex. I don't know. I don't want to get too much into the rules. So let me see how basic I can make this. So this is a worker placement game where you have different types of workers. You have your basic workers. You also can have a wizard, a dragon, and a warrior. There is a bit of area control. It's also a little bit dudes on a map. And so basically you have 3 workers to start with, 3 basic workers. And when you're placing out on the board, and the board is made of these modular hexagonal pieces, there are certain spots that will give you different types of resources. I think you've got like wood and scrolls and gems, I'm blanking on the others. There's like 6 or 7 different resources. And so what you'll do is you'll place out anywhere you want on the board. It can't be where someone else is present already, at least on your initial placement. And then all of the hexes start with these certain tiles that have the resources on them. So when you get that tile, you can either discard it to just get those resources, or you can keep it, and that certain cards will have these sockets where you can plug these things in. You could plug it in as a cost, or you can plug it as a reward. It's very interesting. Now, in my next turn, everyone takes a turn. It's back to me. Now my next worker has to be adjacent to one of the workers I've already placed. So there's definitely a spatial element here. But now I can place into a space where another player already is, and that may trigger a combat after I've activated the space. And so combat's going to occur. One of the weapons or one of the resources you have are weapons that you can add to your combat strength, and basically you're rolling dice. It's kind of like a risk style resolution where we add up all the strength of my units, all the strength of your units. I roll that many dice, you roll that many dice, and we compare highest die to highest die until we need a tiebreaker or something. Pretty interesting. There's also these monsters that can show up, and the monsters can basically charge you from adjacent spots. There are special locations that will allow you to recruit new workers. They will allow you to draw new magic cards. So you start the game, I think, with 3 magic cards, which are cards that either give you points at the end of the game, or they give you some sort of ability in combat, or they just say when you can play it and you play it, right? Just, random effect cards. But then there's also a space which is going to let you buy these upgrade cards that are going to be it's the primary way that you build an engine. So there's a card for each element. This is a game about elements. So there's light and dark, and fire and ice, and wind and earth. And there's 2 others, I think. And so these different elemental cards will give you some sort of an ability when you recall your workers. So it's a place workers and then a recall worker type game. And the cool thing here is when you recall workers, they also get to take actions. So you start the game with a basic card that has an action to gain more workers, an action to get a resource, and then an action to do something. To build the dwellings, which I'll come back to in a second. Remember I said I was going to keep this short, Alex? I'm a dirty, dirty liar.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
There's just so much going on here. But then you get these elemental cards, and they give you other options to bring your workers back when you recall them, to have them do things. And again, it kind of builds this engine. So I mentioned these dwellings. Basically, you're able to turn one of your workers on the board into a dwelling. So your little meeple, he gets a little house hat, is the only way I can describe it. And it's now a dwelling. You've lost that worker for placement purposes, but it's going to be worth a certain number of points at the end of the game. What's interesting is as you build dwellings, you're going to increase on the elemental track that corresponds to the elemental character of that hex you just built on. As you gain elemental cards, you're also going to increase on that track. And at the end of the game, you're going to count up all of your dwellings on a certain element, all of the cards you have of that certain element, and multiply it by where you are on the track. So yeah, that's rough. That's a rough, I think I covered about 70% of the game. This was really good. I have to say, the way that this is produced, there is so much stuff here. There are so many resources, so many cards, so many different decks of cards, and this game would be a nightmare to set up and break down. It would be a total nightmare that would definitely hurt the play experience on our Goldrum scale because of all of the setup required. However, they thought about that ahead of time, and I don't know I think they're game trays, maybe they're game trays, but basically everything is set up in such a way that you have all of these different trays, all of the decks, like there's 8 decks, 10 decks. They're all set up in different spots on the trays with cover. All of the player pieces there's a spot for all of the different resources, your workers. It even tells you how much it costs on the tray to hire new workers. Like there's just so many little things that they thought of in the storage of this game that once you've taught it, once you know how to play, the setup on this game is a breeze. Like it is like, this would be brutal. It would be such a brutal fiddly. You'd have to pull out your 15 bags of resources, and then you'd have to get your, stack of cards and then separate the decks out. And then there's all these little tiny tokens that correspond to the certain elements that you place on the new hexes when they come out. And it would be a nightmare. But there's so much went into this production. Like it's definitely an overproduced game, but it's warranted. Apparently there's a version of this game where I think it's the monsters can make noises. We didn't have that version of the game at Empire. That seems a bit much. I mean, I certainly wouldn't refuse to play that. That might be fun. But this was a beautifully produced game. Luke designed a heck of a game though. Like this was a super thinky game. This was really good. What year is it? Is it 20? It's 2020.
I think it was the last year release technically.
Oof. I mean, should it be a 2021 game though?
I think it will be considered for awards in various places as probably a 2021 game. I just saw, for instance, Dice Tower nominations not too long ago, and I believe that's going to be getting consideration in 2021, not 2020.
Okay, well, if it's considered, because it says 2020 on BGG, if it's considered a 2021 game, it's already a very early contender for possibly Game of the Year. It is excellent. It is incredibly good. And so here's the good thing, right? Whenever you're done playing a game, there can be this certain level of frustration where you're like, oh, I know what I should have done differently. Now I get it. I should have done this first. And you're just jonesing to play again, right? That's always a sign of a good game, or at least a sign that you really enjoy a game when if time permitted and you didn't have obligations and a family, you would totally be like, so do we just set this up again right now? So I'm super excited to play this again. I think it's really solid. I think that you would like it. And I think that you would appreciate the organization and the production. And I think ultimately it's just a really solid game. So that is Dwellings of Eldervale, but we're not going to review it because it's like $200.
Look, there's a strong possibility that when things open up, I will have some level of access to this, and you obviously already have access to it. So I think it's possible we can make this thing happen.
It's super good, and I think you'll like it. I don't think you'll love it, but I think you'll like it.
So as I'm looking in there as an example, I don't know. It's expensive, but it is listed as a 3.2 weight game, and you've described it like it's fairly complicated, but it seems like it's mechanically simpler than that. Is that right?
It is. There's definitely a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of interaction between. I didn't even mention that you play different fantasy races that all have not asynchronous, asymmetric abilities. So, but yeah, ultimately it's just not that complex. It's 3.2. That's what you said?
3.2 weight.
Yeah, 3.2, 3.5. I want to put it past 3.5.
Okay. Just for the record, by the way, we may actually see a Dice Tower nomination for it in 2020 this year. So I don't know when it's going to actually get considered. It's certainly one of those that's on the cusp, or you could give it a kind of a COVID caveat where it didn't have as much access at, say, conventions as a typical release would have.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. All right. Well, that's Dwellings of Eldervale. Sean, I have one more to discuss, and this is the Whatnot Cabinet. This is from Pencil First Games, designed by Steve Finn, Keith Matejka, Eduardo Baraf, with art by Beth Sobel. And this is one of those kinds of games that if you like these delightful, lighter, puzzly, kind of relaxing games, this one's for you. And this is, in my mind, maybe slightly better than Calico in some ways. It feels a lot like Calico. That comparison was made a lot as we played it. How it works is you have a cabinet you're trying to fill up. It's basically a 3x4 grid, so it's 3 columns of 4 rows, and you have these different items that you're going to have access to of different types. I think there's 5 different items and 5 different colors. It could be 6 of each. Don't quote me on that exactly. But on your turn, you are going to use your worker to select one of 4 available actions. Those actions could be draw 3 from the bag, 3 of these tiles from the bag, pick 2 to keep, and add them to your display. It could be draw 2 from the bag, pick 1 to keep, and then take 1 additional one from the remaining ones. There's a kind of a floor of available ones that are out there. It could be draw 2 and then keep 2 out of the 6 that would probably be out there. Or there's another version of that. I think where you completely wipe the entire floor and refill it and then pick 2 from that. But basically every turn, every worker you use, you're going to be getting 2 of these tiles to add to your cabinet. How it's arranged is important. So you're looking for either all of the same or all unique. Colors is what counts in the columns, and different types of objects is what counts in the rows. So if I have 3 different objects across one row, that will get me 1 point for that row at the end of the game. But if I have 3 of the same object, that will get me 3 points. Same goes for colors, except it's 2 points if you have all different colors, and 4 points if it's all the same color. But there are other things you're trying to do as well. There are these kind of challenge cards. I don't know the exact name, but basically objectives that are out there, which says, hey, be the first person to fill all 4 corners of your board. Or be the first person to place 7 tiles without completing a row or column, and you'll take this bonus card and score those points at the end of the game. There's also an item that will score 1 additional point for you, and then some of the items themselves also have bonus points on them. So it's a little bit of a point salad-y type of thing, but basically you're just trying to fill in this 3x4 cabinet. 20-minute game, super simple, worker placement done really, really straightforward in an elegant fashion, puzzly satisfying, beautifully illustrated, and I give this one a strong recommendation, the Whatnot Cabinet. Well, that'll do it for games we've played, but Sean, I gotta blow the dust off of this thing, because we're heading on back to the news desk.
Let's do it. Yeah, boy!
All right, first up in news, Plan B Games.
This is crazy.
Has been acquired by Asmodee. And this was pretty much breaking the day that we're recording this, Sean. And it was not lost on people, the connections here and how ironic this is to a degree. It also shows you the prevalence of Asmodee within the hobby. So Sophie Gravel, I don't actually know how to pronounce her last name. Apologies. It could be just Gravel. It's spelled that way. But she was the CEO of what was formerly F2Z Entertainment. This was a publisher that had multiple imprints. It had Z-Man underneath it. It had Plaid Hat underneath it. It had Pretzel Games underneath it. And it was sold to Asmodee in 2016. So then Sophie went off and started Plan B in 2016, 2017, that ballpark. And all of a sudden, Plan B has become wildly successful in and of itself.
Let me interrupt. So it's a very meta name for the company, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? She's like, all right, this is our Plan B, right? We just got bought out by Asmodee. This is our Plan B publishing company.
Yes. Well, and the logo is I was reading up on this kind of to check my history a little bit, but the logo, which I never noticed, is apparently meant to resemble a butterfly. It's meant to represent kind of the next phase of evolution that you would go through. But it's specifically based off of this concept of, this is our Plan B. This is what we're going to after Asmodee bought us out. So then Plan B becomes wildly successful in and of its own right. Most well known for Azul, but it's also it also has Eggerspiel under its umbrella and Next Move Games. So let's add up. You have Azul, which I already mentioned, Great Western Trail, Coimbra, Camel Up, the Century series, and then Pretzel Games is also part of this deal as well. So you get Junk Art and Men at Work, and it's crazy. But what's so funny about it is you have a company that was started up as a Plan B after getting bought out, get bought out. Nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so some of the chatter is, so what's her third company going to be called?
Right. Right.
So I think I saw like Threefer, Plan C, I'm trying to think did you see any of those?
I saw Plan C was the main suggestion I saw.
Yeah.
Though I think you have to kind of get a little more creative with it. Three's the charm or something like that.
Oh yeah, someone did
third
say
time's the charm.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah, I love it. By the way, if that company is accepting investments, I would be all in on that company. Unreal. To think, Sean, to the way that company got built up and how quickly it established itself as, hey, we've got some really high quality games. Mm-hmm. Really high quality games is remarkable. Even though we didn't like Alma Mater, kind of their latest release, they've had far more hits than misses. So, yeah. Pretty crazy and worth having the news section back, if only for that. But Sean, there's Baseball Highlights 2045 first mention related news as well. Also dropping this same day we're recording the podcast is the new Kickstarter for Baseball Highlights, the dice game, and Faux Diamonds. Both of these are Mike Fitzgerald designs. Baseball Highlights, the dice game, I have play tested. It's effectively a baseball roll and write. It sort of has a lot of that kind of combo-y mechanism that you would expect in Gone Shown Clever. If I recall correctly, there's elements of drafting certain pools of dice. I have not played the final version of this. I only played it when it was in testing, so I don't know how it's changed, but that was the core of the game, at least when I was using it or was giving it a spin. And then you have Faux Diamonds. And Sean, do you remember Diamonds?
Yeah. No, I love Diamonds.
Yeah. So
great trick-taking game. One of my favorites.
Great trick-taking game. Released by Stronghold. This is the sequel to Diamonds, but it's being released by EGG, Eagle Griffin Games. And this is, I think it actually looks really interesting, Sean, because you have individual markets for these kinds of suits, these different diamond suits. And if you win the trick, you can sell at the price that's listed. You can sell your diamonds at that price. But you can be undercut. Someone can come in with a fake diamond and basically get to swoop in and sell at that price instead of you. You only get a small payout. Or you can play offsuit and sell at whatever the market price is on that for a profit. So it's this kind of interesting economic market manipulation type trick-taking game. Super intriguing. You can get both of those base games for $47. The Football Highlights expansion is $8 more, $8 shipping in the U.S. I'm a backer. As of the time of this recording, it had not quite funded yet, but it was certainly on pace to. I think it's more likely than not that it will. Though it's interesting, Sean. It's interesting how we get accustomed to a specific date and time. And Tuesdays have become, I should say, the de facto Kickstarter launch date. And I don't know if launching on a different day maybe hurt this campaign or not. I'm not sure. But in any case, if you love Baseball Highlights and you like roll and writes, you should probably check this one out.
Alex, can you refresh the page and see if it's funded now?
Oh, did I speak too soon?
No. Hold on. And pledge.
Okay.
I'm pledging for both games. Did I get it over the top?
Did you pledge $3,642?
I did. No.
Oh, amazing. I did see your pledge just come in. So no, as of the time of this recording, it's at $11,400 of its $15,000 goal. It's going to happen. I'm pretty sure about that. So, that's Faux Diamonds and Baseball Highlights. Now, did you back for both games, Sean, or did you just back for Faux Diamonds? Okay.
Nope. I backed for both.
He's in?
For both.
All right. Well, we're in. Mike Fitzgerald's a good dude. I obviously am all things Baseball Highlights all the time. I'm on the fence about whether I'm going to get the Football Highlights dice game expansion or not, but 100% getting the Baseball Highlights dice game base game. So there you go. That's our Kickstarter, and that is our return to the news desk.
Well, we talked a lot the last couple episodes about the Freedom 5 Kickstarter that was up from our friends over at arcanewonders.com. And shucks, wouldn't you know it, the campaign is over. A very successful campaign. They had almost $1 million in pledges, $944,247. Oh my goodness, that's so much money. Now, don't fret though, because if you didn't back in time, you can still do a late pledge. You can get the Citizen Pledge for $49. You can do the Hero Pledge, which is for the Kickstarter exclusive edition, for $109. So head on over to freedom5game.com. That's freedom5, F-I-V-E, game.com. That'll send you over to their late pledge site where you can take a look at all the different options for getting in a late pledge. Not sure how long this is going to be up and running for, so I would say hurry, act now. Definitely check it out. That's freedom5game.com. Additionally, check out all of Arcane Wonders' other awesome titles at arcanewonders.com. All right, go check it out.
Sean.
Why do all of our ads have to stop, or start rather? Why do all of our ads have to start with one of us saying the other person's name? Alex, do people not know what they're listening to? And do they not recognize how distinct your voice is from my voice?
Well, Alex, I think that we're completely distinct as human beings and individuals.
I agree. For example, Sean, which is you, not me, you have a very lovely game topper, do you not?
I do, in fact, Alex, have a wonderful game topper. I enjoy it so very much. It's something where I don't have to have a full-on, all-purpose, all-the-time game table. I can have a game table when I want a game table and have a normal table when I don't want a game table.
So, Sean, I hear that, well, shoot, the Kickstarter's over, right? The Kickstarter's been over for 6 months? How on earth can I get my own game topper, Sean?
Well, Alex, it turns out it's not too late. You can go to Game Topper's website at gametoppersllc.com, and there are still some toppers you can get. Some of the packages have already sold out, but there's still some things out there. You get a Baker Street bundle. You can get some of their amazing thematic game mats. Sean, I got a little secret for you.
Is the secret...
Wait, no, Alex, I have a secret for
Sean,
you.
Based on this fact that our buddy Berkey is a very industrious fellow?
It is, in fact, Alex, that our friend Perky is a very industrious fellow. And keep your ears peeled, Alex. There's another Kickstarter coming later in 2021.
Should I keep them peeled or should I keep my ears to the ground?
You should keep them somewhere where they're going to be able to hear this news.
Okay, fair enough. Well, if you want to learn more about Game Toppers and the awesome products that they have, you should head on over to GameToppersLLC.com.
It's always a showstopper when you're playing on a Game Topper. Don't you wish for a simpler time? A time before pandemic, a time before really the internet had taken hold, where the biggest concern was Mother Nature and repopulating the Earth and Captain Planet and doing good and cleaning the planet up. Well, Capstone Games remembers, and they've come out with Renature, trying to re-inspire a love of nature. But does it work, or is this game just polluting the hobby? We'll tell you.
All right, so Renature, designed by the all-star design team of Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer. How many SDJs and variants do they have between the two of them?
Well, while you are reading off the rules, I'm going to get you an official count
on perfect.
SDJs between them. But it's at least a bunch.
A bunch, yes. A metric, a bunch. Okay, art by Dennis Lohausen. And as you said, this is from Capstone Games, and it's part of their Simply Complex line that the Builders was the flagship games. And it looks like it was also developed by Deep Print Games. So here's what they say the object of the game is in Renature. In a polluted valley, you have set yourselves the task of helping nature reclaim what is hers. Along the course of a brook, you place dominoes with animals on them and replant the adjacent areas to score points. When all dominoes have been played, the game ends with a final scoring, and the player with the most points wins. So yeah, this is a domino laying game, and it's also an area majority game. So you've got a square board, and it mentioned a brook because there is a line of a meandering brook that branches off, and that is what you're going to be placing your animal dominoes on. Now, this brook are going to surround these various areas where you're going to plant plants, and they're of varying size. So some are size 2, size 3, 4, I think all the way up to 13. There are, I think, 4 starter spots at the top of the board. Basically, on your turn, and you're always going to have 3 dominoes in hand. And on your turn, you're going to place a domino from your hand onto the game board. It either needs to be on one of the 4 starter spots, or it needs to be touching another domino where there's a matching face. And there are, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 animals, I believe. There's a butterfly and a gecko and a turtle and a woodpecker and I think, is it a badger? Is it a badger? Badger? Is it a badger? I don't know if that's a badger or not. So yeah, that's the basic placement rules. You have to place in the starting spot one of the 4, or you have to place adjacent to a domino with a matching animal. That makes sense. However, there are wild animals, like wild, not like, wild animals. And at the start of the game, the butterfly is the wild animal, or the joker. At the top of the board, there is a track, and you'll place a little marker there to show that it starts off as which animal's the joker. There's a cloud action you can take. You start the game with a handful of clouds that have different actions you can spend them on, but one of them is to move that joker button either left or right to change which is the joker animal. And that's a pretty interesting decision there at times. Now, after you place your domino, if there are any empty adjacent areas next to either one of the 2 sides of the domino, you can place a plant from your player board into that space. And there are 4 types of plants. There is a level 1 turf, a level 2 bush, a level 3 pine tree, and a level 4 oak tree. So when you place one of these plants of yours, you're going to score a point for planting that plant. Additionally, you're going to score a point for any other plants that have already been planted in that area, as long as they are the same size or smaller. So if I plant a turf and Alex has already placed a bush there, the bush is size 2, so I'm not going to get a point for his bush. I'm just going to get a point for my turf. But if I place a pine and Alex has his bush there, well, I'm going to get a point for my pine and a point for his bush. All right. Now, what's interesting is you have your own player pieces in your player color, but you also have a certain number of neutral pieces among the 4 types in your color. Now, the reason that this is important is because once an area gets fully surrounded by dominoes, you're going to score that area. And there's 2 points you can get. There's a top point and a second place point. And if you have a tied value, you're going to basically add up all of my level 1s are worth 1 point, all my level 2s are worth 2 points, etc. If 2 players or a player and the neutral color has a tied value, they don't count towards scoring at all. So it's very possible, and I took great enjoyment from doing this, even though Raquel beat me every time. But I took great enjoyment from having my little level 1 turf in a spot, and then Raquel had like a level 2, and then I placed a level 2 neutral in that final spot so that the neutral and Raquel's piece canceled each other out, and I scored the top points and the bottom points. I should also mention that if you're the one that completes an area, not completes an area, but surrounds an area, you're going to get the token that was on that space, regardless of whether you're first, second, or whatever. That's worth a variable number of points at the end of the game. At the end of your turn, you're going to draw back up to your, having 3 dominoes in hand, and you will continue to do this. Now, I mentioned clouds before, and clouds can be used, again, to change the joker. They can also be used to take an extra turn if you spend 3 clouds. They can also be used to recall any neutral tiles from the board, or not neutral tiles, neutral plant pieces, or plant pieces of your color, assuming you have open spots for them on your player board. But it's based on the level of that plant. So An oak costs 4 clouds to return, which is a pretty hefty price. I should also mention that near the bottom of the board, there are opportunities to get additional cloud tokens. Basically, they're predetermined spots they go on, and whenever you place a plant on them, you get one of those cloud tokens, but they're few and far between. So don't count on it too often. But you're going to keep going, and then at the end of the game, you're going to score points. Any unscored areas that weren't completely surrounded are going to get scored, and then you're going to flip over the scoring tiles that you collected by closing off areas, add those up, and of course, whoever has the most points is the best Renaturer, and you've won Renature. So yeah. All right, Alex, we heard Dan talk about this last week or 2 weeks ago.
Before that, so I don't have a specific number on Spiel or Counterspiel nominations.
Oh, yes.
But I can mention that design team between the two of them, not necessarily both on the same game, are responsible for El Grande, responsible for Azul, responsible for Downforce, in fact, Tikal, Torres, Coliseum. There's a lot of games. Just saying, they're both fairly notable. It took a long time to browse through all of, specifically Wolfgang Kramer's credited games. He has a lot.
Yeah. No, amazing design pedigree. Absolutely amazing. No question there. So, okay. So yeah, we heard about Dan talk about this on our last episode in his recent plays, and it lit a fire under you, Alex. You're like, we got to review this game pronto.
Right away. Immediately. Dan's definitely sold us on this. He was saying, "Hey, this is one of my favorites. It's incredible." So it comes with that kind of recommendation. You got to check it out. You got to vet it a little bit and see what you really think. See what's really going on with this game. But my impressions in looking at it were mixed, because it's a Capstone game, so I knew it was likely to be well produced, and we'll talk about rulebook here in a moment. And in fact, in a lot of regards, it was well produced, but it also had this kind of we'll talk about this in the look of it, but just the look of it initially didn't strike me as that engaging. It wasn't like, oh, this is beautiful, I can't wait to play, this is so interesting, and I want to. I don't know. My expectations were kind of weird. It has a fantastic design pedigree. I like the publisher, but I don't know about the look of it. It just kind of looks not like a kid's game necessarily, but borderline that in a lot of ways. And I think that confused me, Sean. What were your impressions?
Well, Alex, we were of one mind, I think, because I had the same thoughts. Amazing design pedigree. It's Capstone, simply complex line. The Climbers I love. The Climbers is this incredibly simple game that is complex. Hey, that's the name. I get it now. But really and truly, like it is such a thinky game with really nothing to the rule set. And games were tense, games were exciting. I love the Climbers. And so of course I was curious, what was the other simply complex game? It was like I'll figure that out in a second. But yeah, I remember seeing this game come to Empire months ago, whatever it was. I picked it up, looked at the back, and I was like, I'll pass. So yeah, I think we had a kind of a similar impression from the box appeal, especially for me, the back of the box. It didn't look all that exciting. So that was kind of my impression. But after hearing Dan talk about it, after learning a little bit more about it, I'm like, okay, I'll give this a shot. So I was hopeful.
Yeah, fair enough. Rulebook, Sean, did you learn this one from the rules?
I sure did. The first time Raquel and I played, we said, hey, we need to get some plays into this game. I broke it. I didn't break it down. It was already broken down. But I opened it up and I read the rule book. She was coming in like 5 minutes, and she came in and I still had a minute left, and it was pretty straightforward. I think it's a really solid rule book. It does the thing where things are color coded. So for example, they give you an overview of phases A, B, C, and D. A is red, B is purple, C is blue, and so on. And then when they go explaining those things in detail, they're broken out into those color boxes. I'm a very visual person, and so and organizationally minded, and so whenever a rule book does that, big fan of it. I think it was I didn't have any issues learning the game from the rule book.
I didn't either, and I think it did a really good job of laying out corner cases or things that could potentially be corner cases and making it clear that exactly what was supposed to be going on. I think it was a very good rule book in that sense. Well laid out, good examples, clear what needed to happen. And yet, I will say this, Sean, I did a bad job explaining this on our first play, my first play with Abby, primarily in one regard, which is exactly how do you score for a section. So when an area gets roped off and it gets scored, what happens? The rules actually, I think, do a good job of making it clear. I had that get lost in translation when I initially taught this. So it's more of a note of caution to folks if you pick this one up. Read that section carefully and teach that section carefully, because it's a little unusual to have, say, both first and second place points awarded when there's only one person eligible for those points. That's an unusual feature of a game like this, and a situation that comes up fairly often, at least in my experience. So just be aware of that as a thing that's there. But no, but by and large, a well-done rulebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also, as mentioned, also learned it from the rules. No complaints there. Art and components. And Sean, I think there's kind of two tales to tell here, in a sense. In one sense, and we were talking about this, it was funny, I'd mentioned to you, look at these nice chunky dominoes. And you're like, no, this doesn't look like chunky dominoes. Nope. Yep. It has absolutely very nice chunky dominoes. Oh, those are satisfying. They work. You don't like them, Sean?
They were fine. I wouldn't say satisfying.
Oh, okay. They're not the, like, when I think of dominoes, I think of these like plastic thin things with the dimples on them and those kinds of dominoes, and these are a little bit chunkier than that. And I enjoyed that element of things. They're nice wood-shaped pieces. It has a nice feel of quality. But I have an issue, Sean.
Okay.
They included all of these cloth bags to put away components, and it makes putting away the game fairly straightforward and simple. But to me, I think that game was crying for an insert. Absolutely crying for one. Because if I want to set up a 2-player game versus, say, a 3-player game or a 4-player game, I have to kind of dump and sort in a very deliberate way. And I would have liked an ability to bag those up separately or have them stored separately. So I had all of the wood pieces of one color in one area, wood pieces of another in here, neutral pieces here, the cloud pieces here, and well sorted. And it all kind of living in a bag. At least to me, I didn't enjoy it. You seem to think differently.
My copy just had extra plastic bags.
Oh, well, mine didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, this is an important question. Do you just have a stack of bags for board gaming components? So whenever you break down a new game, you're like, oh, I need extra bags. Here we go.
I have some of those at some point. So we're in between. We're in between moves, but
no. So the better question is, have you purchased bags specifically for this purpose?
No.
Okay.
I know you have.
Please.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm glad it worked out well for you. I don't have or didn't use that kind of thing. So I tend to judge a game based on what comes in the box. And at least for me, didn't come in the box. So I have to judge it off of the organization system it provides you inherently.
Okay.
Now, what it speaks to, Sean, is to me a larger thing, which is the setup on this takes a little chunk of time, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think definitely if things are individually bagged, it speeds it up a bit.
Yes.
But I will say that I think we're back to the Goldrum. There is a little bit of setup, and then I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I feel like the game itself kind of overstays its welcome.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't necessarily have that feeling about it. So I think we're of different minds in that sense. But to me, it was more the amount of setup was relative to the length of game or amount of enjoyment you'd get out of said game. I think didn't quite line up as perfectly as I'd like. It's a little bit of a fiddly setup in that you have to split up the pieces, deal out the dominoes, make sure they're all face down in nice stacks, count them out. All of those kinds of things takes an amount of time, not to mention the adding the little bonus markers to each individual scoring area, and making sure those are set up properly.
That's fair.
Adding the clouds. There's little elements to this that all take up and add up to a decent amount of time. And I think if you're setting up or breaking down with, say, 3 or 4 people, no problem. But setting up solo, it was taking me more time than I wanted it to take. In terms of the art style and look of this, you had mentioned kind of when it was on the table, did you have the same kinds of thoughts seeing it in person?
Yeah, I was really uninspired by the art.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you know what it reminded me of? Do you remember Zoo Books?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Do you remember Zoo Books? Like, for some reason, it reminded me of Zoo Books. And Zoo Books were a thing when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, cool, Zoo Books. Now, and I don't know if it's because I'm not like a naturey person, a naturalist, whatever you want to call it. Like, I prefer to be inside, you know, in air conditioned or climate controlled. And I've never been much of an outdoors person, if that makes sense. And so like, even like the score track around the edge of the board are these sunflowers with, you know, the stalks running together. And, I mean, I think it's a very functional board, but it wasn't drawing me in. And I think that's just maybe a personal taste issue.
I think we'll talk about this with theme 2, but I could envision some kind of other theme or look to this that would have been better. To me, the art kind of played into the whole. I wasn't drawn in thematically by this game, in any shape or form. And again, there's a whole section for that, which usually we talk about later. But it plays into that. Zoo Books is a really interesting way of describing it. To be clear though, there wasn't anything in terms of the look of it that made it non-functional. And in fact, correct, if I want to say a positive thing here, I think the player boards themselves do a fantastic job of reinforcing the rules and reinforcing, hey, you can do this for the cost of this amount of clouds. You can do this for the cost of this amount of clouds. You can get this piece back from the board. Hey, for the cost of this amount of clouds, you can change the Joker. And like it's all laid out. It's clean. It's crisp. There was no confusion to me about what different things did. So I think from that standpoint, it was a success. There wasn't anything that got in the way of me playing the game on a components level other than, say, the setup and breakdown. So
yeah, I agree with that.
All right, gameplay. So you mentioned, Sean, you think it now let me ask you this. Did you just play this with 2 or did you get it in with at least 3?
Quarantine caveat, yes. Only played it with 2.
Oh,
in two players, you have double the pieces. Not double the pieces. Is double the pieces?
It depends. Compared to 4, you have somewhere in that vicinity, I think. But you certainly have more than in a 3-player game. More, and each piece is a turn. So
right. So yeah, only played with 2, and I mean, it looks like it's almost double the pieces. So, yeah, well, why don't you talk about it since you've played it with more than 2, Alex?
Well, so I will say this, Sean. My first play of this was a little bit dicey because if I teach a 2-player game with a significant rule, either questionable or wrong or weird in some way, it can often feel really unfair in a bad way. Like if I have a bad teach of a game, it's not a good recipe. Much like when I was first learning games, if I got a bad teach of a game or even just an okay teach of a game, it was a recipe for me being unhappy. Mm-hmm. So I did a bad job teaching initially, and it didn't go well. Played it again with 3 and had a much better experience. One, because when you understand what's available to you tactically in this game and how the scoring works, which I think is a super interesting element of this game, when you understand how that works, you can make some really interesting decisions. Interesting decisions come up in this game. How do you use your clouds? When do I change the Joker animal? Is this worth it? Do I block things off and try and collect points that way? Do I try and dominate in areas? Do I cut you off by using neutral plants? And those decision points get more interesting in a 3-player game where there are more hands in the pot, so to speak. This game, broadly speaking, does a really interesting job of, for as much as it has this, kumbaya, holding hands, restore life, bring nature to the valley, there's some mean elements to this game. You can play this game in quite a mean way, and it encourages you to do so. You can cut off avenues and block off areas, securing them for yourself. You can make it really hard for someone to play in without paying additional cloud costs. You can make it so that all of their points get wiped off the board. All of this work that they put into a big area gets evaporated. For me, it works better at 3 than it does at 2 because there are more people fighting over these different areas, and because you have that interesting concoction. You also have about the same number of turns. So although it plays in about the same length of time, it never felt like to me it overstayed its welcome. So it's interesting to me to hear you hint at that. So describe it too, Sean. What was good, what was bad about this one for you?
So there were certainly interesting decisions to make. And I do agree with you. And I had this thought during the game. I'm like, I feel like I would enjoy this a little bit more at 3. I don't know that I would have enjoyed it at 4 necessarily, but it was, sometimes you were very limited by what dominoes you had in hand. And so sometimes there would not I didn't feel like there were necessarily meaningful choices. And other times I did. The clouds, having to spend the clouds, I mean, man, they're few and far between. I mean, you're very limited in what you're doing with those clouds. Like if you want to, because let me look here. Is it 5 that you start with, or is
6?
it 6?
You start with 6.
Start with 6. So, I mean, if you want to take an extra turn at some point because you want to set up maybe surrounding a certain thing, but you can't do it in one move. You need 2 moves to do it. And you look and you say, oh, I happen to have just the right dominoes I need for it. That's half of your clouds, right? And I found it difficult to get more clouds. And by the time you could get more clouds, it was 1, maybe there's a spot where you can get 2 in the very bottom middle of the board. But by that point, that was going to be the only cloud I had. So I could maybe take back a turf, or I could change the Joker, but I couldn't do anything like take back, even a bush or a pine that cost 2, 3, etc. So it was, here's how I put it. And here's why I think it outstayed its welcome. The decisions were interesting half the time. And the other half, it was just got to make do as best I can with the dominoes that I've been provided. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I think here's what adjusts that in 3 players and perhaps 4. I didn't play this at 4. The board state changes in a more significant way, and with more dominoes being laid out there are more interesting ways to play. In a 2-player game, you're pretty much, for every turn you don't have to put out a tree, but because you don't want to keep them on your board and have negative points for them, pretty much every turn you are playing a tree in some form or fashion. And the idea of bringing bushes back or shrubs back is not thinkable and doesn't make sense. In a 3-player game, because you overplay what you have available to you, spending to bring those back makes more sense and becomes a more interesting strategic decision. It's not really as much of a decision in a 2-player game. In a 3-player game, it is. And in a 3-player game, taking 2 turns back-to-back is even more valuable. In fact, during our 3-player game, everyone did that. It was valuable to them to do that over the course of the game.
Yeah.
Because the board state's going to change by 2 dominoes, and an opportunity you might see now might not be there. You might have the perfect chance to lay this one out and play into an area that you might not be able to play into come next round. To sneak into an area you might not be able to sneak into next round. To preserve points or grab some of those scoring tokens and really take the initiative. It's not as much of a strategy at 2 players, and so a lot of those tactical decisions you might have are removed just by the nature of the game. And I think it opens up when you add in more players in a way that, to me, added more depth to the game and made the game more interesting. So I think more than most, this one deserves a caveat, at least from you, because I think the 2-player experience of this is just okay. Just okay.
Well, and I'd certainly be willing to try this at 3. I mean, it wasn't, like I said, when a game kind of overstays its welcome, that's not necessarily a kiss of death. Because oftentimes it means there are points when you're enjoying the game. And I mean, otherwise you just be like, no, it was terrible. I didn't like it. I don't think this is terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's quite good. And I think it's quite well designed. But I think for a 2-player game, there's plenty of other things that Raquel and I would rather play. And I'm curious. Let me look up what BGG says it's best at. While you say something.
Sorry. You want me to actually contribute in this moment? No, I thought you were just going to edit that part out where I was just chilling here. No, it's fine. It's all good. No, and Sean, let me jump in and add that I get the idea of luck determining things, but the other thing that having 3 players do is it changes the board state more. It also opens up more possible opportunities, different plays, different angles you can take. Sometimes you're just out of luck. The game does give you ways of mitigating your changing by changing the Joker animal. You can obviously only do that so many times. Clouds are a very limited resource, so when you make that play, you can potentially throw a big wrench into someone's game plan. All of a sudden, that double butterfly that they were using or planning on wedging into a hard-to-use area becomes really hard to place or certainly less productive to place. So I found that level of choice interesting. I found the decisions you make and what dominoes you place at what time interesting. And I do think you need to play this one at 3 because as a 2-player game, it's just kind of a back and forth. Having the neutral player adds some element of challenge to it, but yeah, it's not as good at that count as it is at 3. So I'm not surprised to hear your comments.
Yeah, and looking on BGG, the community says it is best at 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, and I think here's the thing with 4 is 4 you just get into chaos. Obviously, you get into even more folks on the board, but you have fewer domino turns to play, so some of the possible decisions of bringing things back, that doesn't quite work. It's harder to make a complete plan. I think 3 is the right balance for this game, so that doesn't surprise me to see that. It would line up with what I would think it would be like at 4, but obviously I've only played it at 2 and 3. So, yeah, interesting. Having only played it at 2, it doesn't surprise me that's where you came down. Anything else to say on gameplay on this one, Sean?
No, not really. I mean, it's a simply complex game, right? Like there's at least in 2 players, half the time there were very thinky decisions to make. I mean, there were definitely times where I was like, oh man, what am I doing here? Like I really want to get in on this area, but I need this, this particular pine later on. I don't know. There were times when I thought it was really interesting and then times when it wasn't. And if it was just all the interesting parts, I probably wouldn't have thought it outstayed its welcome.
Theme?
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. Yes. Why not?
To me, it's just kind of pasted on. It looks pretty enough, I guess. It has sort of a story to tell, but I mean, it certainly doesn't feel like, I'm at least in Terraforming Mars, right, which has a similar kind of not really restoring nature, but creating nature in a sense type of thing. Mm-hmm. You're building out the board. You're building out greenery. You're increasing the oxygen levels. You're increasing the temperature of the planet. You're making it more livable in a practical way. This is just a very abstracted out, hey, does this butterfly match this other butterfly? It does? Great, you can play it there. My tree's bigger than your tree, so I got a bunch of points in this moment. There isn't a thematic tie to it, and I think I don't have a good, strong idea in this moment for what another theme would be, but I actually think abstracting this game out more might have actually improved its standing, right? As we mentioned, we both had kind of a visceral, kind of reaction to the box of this one, and I think if they had rethemed it in some form or fashion, I think they could have had a little bit more success with it. Just a guess, no evidence to back that up, just a thought that I think the theme hurt it more than it helped it. You seem pretty just neutral on it, though.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was thinking while I was playing this. So I'm like, I mean, this is very abstract. Like this theme, it doesn't need this particular theme.
And what's interesting to me is you have someone in Kiesling who knows you can have tremendous success with a completely athematic game, or just about athematic game with Azul. Azul has a theme, but it's really not trying to push it, and it's beautiful in its abstractness. And I think this one could have been equally beautiful in abstractness, and I think it actually would have improved the game's reception, at least for me. Just a thought. Anyway, Guild did have one thought on this, and it's a little bit different from ours. Paul Naxer says, Renature hit that beautiful abstract with depth sweet spot for me. Stellar production all around. Having the cloud tokens to earn and spend makes you keep an eagle eye on your opponent's moves. That really spices up what would otherwise be a so-so area control game. I didn't find the bonus flower tokens to be too swingy, just something else to keep an eye on so you don't get behind. Tentative 5, pending more plays. And just to throw it out there, we rate all games here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale, 1 being bad, 6 being really good, and 5 is a great game. We'll really turn out to play of it, so Paul really dug this game. Sean, I have a guess as to where your score is with this one.
Well, hold on real quick.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say real quick, Alex. Welcome back, Paul.
Oh yeah, welcome back, Paul.
We haven't heard from Paul and Megan in a while, but Paul had said that it was great to be back in the guild. He hadn't had a commute in a while, and I think that's kind of what we've experienced with a lot of listeners. Like people have commutes, or they had commutes, and as things are starting to come back to some level of normalcy, I'm sure there's many people that. Well, who knows? Who knows, Alex? Who knows what the future looks like? But welcome back, Paul.
Welcome back, Paul.
Have Megan say hi on the guild too.
Yes, for sure. All right. What's your score?
That's a good question. That's a good question, Alex. All right. It's not a 1. It's not a 6. I know that. It's definitely not a 2. Definitely not a 2. 2 is a game that has some merit but has significant issues. That's not true at all. 3, game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. I'm kind of leaning that way. 4 is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time belongs in the duchy. I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's a 3. I think it's a solid 3. I suspect it could go up if I played this at 3 players, but even then, I'm not sure. Even then, it's hard to say. So yeah, I'm going to give this a 3. Game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation, but with a rather large quarantine caveat where, realizing that this is better at 3 players than it is at 2. Alex?
It's about where I thought you'd be. So, Sean, I'm a little bit higher on this one than you are. I'm right at a 4. A good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. I think the core game of this, especially at 3, could be closer to great than good, but I don't like the theme very much here. The setup time, at least to me, was cumbersome. And yeah, I think because it doesn't thrive as a 2-player game, at least for my collection, it kind of needs to do that. I think a 4 is about where this one belongs. A good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. Not nearly as excited as Dan King, the Game Boy Geek, or Paul Naxer are, but I think I'm a little higher on it than you are, mainly because I played it at 3. That being said, Sean, if I had to predict, I would say it wouldn't quite get up to a 4, even if you played it at 3, just based on your taste in games.
Yeah.
So there you go. That'll do it for the Duke's review of Renature. Sean gives this one a 3, and I give this one a 4.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out Dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
Next up, our Duke's Double Take, looking back on episode 220, Trains, Pains, and Moral Stains, where we were joined by Dr. Joshua Acosta as we reviewed Tokyo Metro. And this was one where when he picked it out, it was specifically with, oh, good luck, Alex. Have fun with this. And I ended up a little bit stronger on this than expected. I said at the time that this one had, there were plenty of negatives. I thought the box size, while it gave it some shelf appeal, really got in the way of the functionality of this game. The rulebook was unclear in parts, and it was unclear who I would play this game with on an ongoing basis. But I found a lot of the core puzzle of this game and how it all functioned and came together so incredibly interesting that alone was enough to bring it up to a 4. Not a game I necessarily loved playing, but a game that I was certainly fascinated by. And I said at the time, I intend to keep this. Well, we'll talk about what happened with that here in a moment. But Sean, at the time, you gave this one a 4 as well. You said you wanted to play it more, you wanted to explore it more, but the small box and ease of play issues that came up with this really knocked it down in your book took it down from what could have been a 5 down to a 4. And then Josh himself said that this had some lovely connections to other games in the series that he wants to experience. The exploration and all of this, it brought it up, and for him it was a clear 5, a great game for him. Sean, have you played this game since?
No, I haven't, and that's more of a product of quarantine than anything else. I mean, I really did like it. It's a nice little routes building-ish economic game. Did things very differently, very interesting. I would certainly be eager to play this again. Or I am eager to play this again. How about that?
Okay. So
I'll keep it at a 4. It's not going anywhere. Good game, worth playing. Just not all the time belongs in the duchy. So for example, our buddy Matt Walker has it. If Matt was like, "Hey, I'm going to get rid of this. Do you want it?" I'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll take it."
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Alex, what about you?
So I either played this one immediately after or immediately before the review again, and I'm unclear as to which one it was, but I believe I gave it away to one of my St. Louis friends who definitely was going to get more play out of this than I was, and enjoyed it, really, really engaged with it, and it meant more to him than it would to me. I would still stand by my score of a 4 here, just based on the quality of game and the interest level in it. But I think by strict ducal definition, it would probably be closer to a 3, just in terms of caring about access to it. So I don't know. I'd keep it at a 4 anyway, but I don't have it anyway. So yep. So that'll be a pretty quick double take because the guild didn't talk about this one at all, Sean. And we didn't reach out to Josh for his thoughts. Sorry, Josh. So it's 4 from you and a 4 from me. It stays where it is. Done.
Boom, boom, boom.
And just like that, Sean, the best of the rest, the honorable mentions for this week. And we had a couple people take on the one-word name challenge. The first of which, the name father, Steve O'Rourke, who came with proliferate, referring to kind of the spread of lines and the splitting of lines and division in Tokyo Metro. And of course, Renature, bringing nature back in Renature.
And perhaps Steve knew that proliferate is one of my favorite magic mechanics. And knowing that, he thought maybe it would help him win. But
I doubt it.
But not enough. You want me to tell you what that does, Alex, that particular mechanic?
No, I don't care.
Okay, fair enough. Josh Ian Gurr suggested the green line, referring to different colored lines in metros like Tokyo Metro, and also green as in nature. So green line, good job, Josh Ian Gurr.
And specifically, he mentioned the green line in Boston was what came up.
Ah, gotcha.
Yep. Don Gilstrap came with Kramer and Kiesling, Domino Drift, which sounds like a baller movie, to be sure. So nice name.
I'd watch it. Yeah, I'd totally watch it. And then Chris K suggested Domino Arigato, Mr. Roboto.
I first read that when he posted that title as just Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Well, yeah.
Roboto. I was like, I don't understand. I don't get it. And then I read it again, and it was like, oh yeah, okay. I get what you're going with there, Chris. Makes sense.
Domino
Arigato, Mr. Roboto. Domino. And then finally, King Splendor also joining in on the one-word naming challenge with retrain. So referencing Renature, referencing the trains in Tokyo Metro, and combining them into a word that in and of itself is a word, retrain. So nicely done. And that'll do it.
All right.
Yeah.
That will do it. Wow, we're winding up pretty early here on this record. This is pretty interesting. But that's good, Alex.
Yeah.
Because I have ruins upstairs that I need to add sand to. I need to prime. We've got a whole bunch of painting to do.
We got work to do in figuring out what we're reviewing next time.
Well, we'll make it quick. So thanks everybody in the guild for all of your contributions. And thanks again to Andrea. Wait, I can never remember. I feel like I never remember the third one.
Andrea? Oof, this is bad.
Well, thank you again, A. Mary Hugh, for naming episode 246 back on track. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
Seen.
Oh.
Or say on.
Oh, boy.
But Sean.
Ugh.
And Alex. I gotcha.
AleX, actually. It has a hyphen in it now.
Alex. Okay. Nucleator, everybody. Worst outro ever. Woo! Going with it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on March 11th, 2021. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers, LLC. You can learn more about Game Toppers' upcoming Kickstarter at GameToppersLLC.com and find out all you need to know about Arcane Wonders at ArcaneWonders.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!